Hi, thank you for watching. I am Mark Singh. I am a solutions engineer at Progress Software, and I will be taking you through a brief overview of our WhatsUp Gold application, its functions and features. So let's go ahead and get started. The main console you're looking at here is our web console. This is generally how you will interact with the product. And so you will find this login page where, or login window where you'll provide your username and password to get access to the web console. That is built on IIS, so what's a goal will configure IIS during install or during setup to for you to select ports that you want to use. You want to use HTTPS web access. You have that option during setup. It also comes with SQL Express in the back end, so that's how all data is stored. Um, you do have the option of using full SQL Server if you wish. That could be done during setup or post install. It's an easy process to migrate to full SQL. Now, the view that you're looking at here is the My Network view. It is the top view when you log into the product. You'll notice it here at the very on the left. It basically shows you all devices and the status of all devices that you're monitoring. There's a legend here, and this will tell you green is up, red is down, and there are some additional types of status there. For example, a device is in green status, but there's a red dot. What that means simply is that something that we're monitoring on that particular device, an active monitor, they're down. So that is, and apparently there's an incorrect service associated with that access point. Now, it does layer 2 discovery as well. It is agentless, so it does rely on protocols like SNMP to discover devices. And one of the benefits of doing an SNMP discovery is that it will show you layer 2 associations with your network devices. Or you do also have things like WMI where it will show you Hyper-V associations, there's VMware, and so on. So let's go ahead and get started with the discovery process we could show you how you get to a view like this. How do you get your devices into WhatsUp Gold? First, you start with discovery. Here on the discovery, you'll see something called New Scan. And here it will give you a wizard to go through. You're going to feed WhatsUp Gold the information, and then it will take it from there. So starting with what devices do you want to discover? Any device with an IP address can be monitored with WhatsUp Gold as long as the WhatsUp Gold system is able to connect and reach that IP address. And so we start with a range of IPs or a subnet of IP addresses and provide it WhatsUp Gold with those entries. Then when you click the next option, well, before we do, notice down below there's also discovery for things like AWS devices, Azure devices, Cisco Meraki devices. Now, all that will depend on what we have available here in step 2 there. So those will be the credentials. But let's stick to on-prem discovery here. When you click the next option here, you'll see a few more checkboxes like virtual environment. This is if you wish to use our virtual add-on to monitor your virtual devices, then those are currently VMware or Hyper-V. Then there's the wireless infrastructure, including clients. What are the devices that are connected to your wireless access points? It will detect that and discover those as well. WhatsUp Gold does storage device discovery, NetApp, EMC, for example. You can monitor those with through the storage devices. You can discover them through the storage devices option here. And then there's an option here to use a seed address scan, and then it'll give you a scan depth level in terms of how far down the rabbit hole, so to speak, you want to go in terms of discovering IP addresses. It defaults at a scan depth of 3. When you click next, this is the limit option. Are there devices you want to exclude from your discovery? And this is where you'll select that. Is there a maximum number of devices you want to discover, and so on? And so you can see all the various exclusions and limitations or limits here in this view. Step 2, very important. Now, again, anything with an IP address, WhatsUp Gold can discover and monitor. So it'll go out there and do discoveries and it find these devices that are responding to these pings. Now, what does it do next? using the available credentials library, and you'll see the options that you have here: SNMP 1, 2, and 3. There's Windows, there's ADO. Down below, you see VMware, there's JMX, SMIS for storage, the Azure, AWS, Cisco Meraki, and so on. All that are various credential types that WhatsUp Gold will take from its library to interrogate the devices as it discovers them. And so the reason for that is that WhatsUp will learn more from these devices with the available credentials. That's how it does layer two topology mapping. That is how it is able to determine what type of software, for example, you have installed on your Windows infrastructure. And so we'll get into some of these items as we go along here. But uh, you want to fill out the credentials library first because it makes it a better discovery as opposed to just a list of generic devices that respond to ping. Um, and then when you click on next here, this options window is pretty much optimized for the best discovery experience, but you could also adjust it. You could also set up these discoveries to run on a recurring basis, which is something you may want to consider to make sure, or if you want to know, for example, that there are new IP addresses found on your network, you can set up discovery to include that in its email report in terms of how many new IP addresses have been found. And so then once you get to review and run, you can name it and save it and have it execute that discovery. The result will be shown here in the Discover Network view. Now, this discovery portion has its own map, which is what's loading here. But the difference is between this map and the one over on my network. Let's go ahead and zoom out here. The difference is that in the Discover Network map, it will also include unmonitored devices. And so anything with a black box is an unmonitored device. And those devices will give you the options to start monitoring. So in WhatsUp Gold, you can discover as many IP addresses as you want. And it does not become a licensed device until you say, okay, let's go ahead and start monitoring these devices. And once you start monitoring those devices, they then move over to the My Network view. And so it will tell you that it's preparing and then move those devices over to this view. And so I should, down below here, you see them popping up, the devices that we've added for monitoring. Now, in this view, as I mentioned, we are seeing the top level, the My Network view, but as you can see here, you have the subgroups where you can have devices association. So let's say you want all devices that have a certain IP address or certain naming convention, so on in a particular group. You could have WhatsUp Gold automatic set those for you. The other thing with these groups is that you can set device group access rights, where you could determine which users in your organization have read access or write access or no access at all. You might have individuals on your team that are responsible for certain devices, so when they log into the console, they're only going to see just those devices and be able to make changes to just those devices, as opposed to every other device that they might not be responsible for. So that is what you have in terms of grouping devices, in terms of shared attributes. You can create as many of these groups as you want as well. A device existing in multiple groups does not change the license or any of that. It is just a shortcut. It is what we call, as you select any device, you'll notice this thing called group membership. All that means is that device can be seen in every group that has a status. Now, as you look at the top right here, you will see some overlays. These two will be enabled by default. The one is to show you the devices. Obviously, you want to see the devices. And the other is to show you the connectivity links and status. Now, I mentioned layer 2 discovery. That's these links. That's what's enabled through this overlay. So you're able to see not only which ports they are that are connected, but you can see the status of those ports as well. And this only applies to the network connections, the layer 2 connections. You could see that also with your Windows or your cloud connections as well. But notice that you're not seeing any links because these are not network ports that are linked as you see up here. So that's the difference. You could also see things like dependency. What a dependency is that, and this is very important for those people who are getting alerts at night. Let's say this switch goes offline, anything that's unreachable, um, they're going to be in a down status, right? What's Go continues to monitor them. But what it does here is stops polling at this point. If this guy goes completely offline, nothing else connected to it gets polled until it comes back online. And speaking of those guys that get alerts at night and so on, you don't want to be flooded with a bunch of alerts. Your cell phone just going off all night because all these devices are no longer reachable from WhatsUp Gold. You'll get one alert, and until that particular device comes back online, uh, everything else will remain in an unmonitored state. So this view here is just a way of showing you which devices are dependent on what other devices. And so you could do that with the green broken arrow. You could do a few things here to set this up. One is you go to the device that you want to make, let's call it the root device. Go to edit devices, and here you will see from the options the dependency option, and you'll see a few items here. This is where you can manually tell it to be up dependent upon something. You can tell it to be down dependent on something. And that scenario, consider a backup situation where some device one device is in the offline state until another device goes online. And so in that case, you will set a down dependency. But um, th- to set this as the root device so that all devices that are connected to it are dependent upon it, what you want to do is use the set dependency root option. When you hit OK there, it automatically set all devices that are connected to it to be dependent upon it. All that is a polling order. What's a go polls this device first and these devices after. And so it will only do that as long as this device is online. Now, again, this is a way for you to see which devices have that enabled. The wireless overlay, and we'll look at some of the layer 2 maps here to show these what these overlay do. In the wireless overlay or wireless infrastructure view here, with this overlay enabled, you can see things like client information, right? You could see how many clients are connected to a particular access point. So when that is disabled, you'll see a regular view of these devices. But this one shows you where you have wireless access or wireless data that are coming. And so when you click on that client information, one of the things that you see, for example, is how much bandwidth is that client using, or which access point is it associated with it, what time or how long did it last, signal strength quality, and so forth. These are all the details that we're collecting through wireless monitoring, and that is done via SNMP. Um, so you have this here as an overlay that you can easily see how many clients are connected to your devices. Uh, the other option you have here is what's called a virtual overlay, and this applies to, again, virtual monitoring with VMware and Hyper-V. When this overlay is enabled, you'll notice these types of association where you have a device that's a host, and as we see here, it's a host, and you have VMs, and these are listed as a virtual machine. And they will also tell you who their host is, which is this guy. So the virtual plugin just simply is more of an indicator to show you what those associations are, the virtual associations in this particular aspect. This overlay here points back to your network devices. I'll go to the core infrastructure group. And here, remember these link lines from earlier, where you can see status of those lines, you can see the ports. Well, what this part does when enabled, you'll notice that line is going to change there. And so you have more of a bold line. It's a bold green line. Now, this will remain green until utilization on those ports or those links hits 80%. So right now, as you can see here, utilization, I don't have much happening here at all. However, if I or this particular any of these ports were to hit 80%, that line would have changed to yellow, and at 90%, that will be a red line. So this is more of an indicator again to show you the level of utilization you're experiencing on these links that are connected here. And then finally, let's talk about the APM overlay. And to show you what this looks like, I'll enable this here. This is a this belongs to or pertains to the APM, the Application Performance Monitoring add-on that is available for WhatsUp Gold. And so in this case, the application that I'm monitoring is SQL, and here it's telling me it's in a warning state. So with this overlay enabled, I can see the status of applications that I'm monitoring, and I'm able to get a visual status of whether it's in a good state, is it in a warning state, or is it in a down state. And I don't have anything that's completely down here, but you'll be able to visually see that as well with these overlays. Now, I am going to skip over to the settings area here, and then we will come back to analyze after that. But under settings, some of the key areas that you might be interested in are is things like external authentication. WhatsUp Gold does have Active Directory. It does have OpenID authentication available for your users. It also comes with its own internal uh, user database, however. But you can use Active Directory, you can use LDAP, you can use OpenID. And then under general setting, this is where you'll go to look at your data retention. So how long are you keeping data? This is where you could adjust those values. And under settings and libraries, this is where you'll see some items here as well that you will be interested in. We talked earlier about credentials, right? So this is where you'll come to add all of your credentials. Again, it is um, suggested that you create your credentials before running your discovery because it will give you a better discovery option or result. The and what I mean by that is if you were to look at device list mode here, notice how you have things like device roles. Let's go over to my network here. You have firewalls, lightweight access point, and so on. So where WhatsUp Gold determines what type of devices these are is through those discovery with those credentials. Without the credentials, it will just be listed as a generic device, as you see here in the background, where it's just listed as just a device, credential 0. So very important. So where you set it up is under the libraries, under credentials, and from here you select the credentials that you want to configure, and then provide it with its information. What's will store that data? That data is securely stored in the database. It is encrypted. Even if you were to send us your database, we couldn't get in there and make sense of those passwords that are stored in our database. The devices are discovered through these credentials, whether it's SNMP or Windows for using WMI. These devices, WhatsUp Gold will be able to collect more information from them. If we were to take a look at some of those to show you what I mean, if you look at your network devices, and let me grab probably one of the core ones here. So if we look at this guy, for example, and look at its properties, we know that it was discovered with SNMP. You're looking at the SNMP ID here, but some of the attributes section here, you'll see here, are information that we're gathering through discovery, and you can see things like MAC address and so on. But there's something called inventory specifically for showing you all data that we've collected on this device. So again, MAC address, model numbers, and so forth. But you can see things like the ARP table, the ARP cache table. You can see asset details. So what serial numbers are associated with these devices? You could see devices that they are. You can see interfaces that are configured, whether you're monitoring these interfaces or not. You can see devices that they're connected to in our discovery. And it will show you what type of discovery link type it is, CDP, for example, and node. And it will show you all this information. So all this data is gathered through the SNMP discovery portion. And so as you can see, it's rich with details and data that you could that what's will learn from just discovering your devices. So again, very important that the credentials are in place. Now, under the library section here, you will also see monitors where you can track or where you can define monitoring for your devices. WhatsUp Gold does come with a default set of basic monitors. Um, it has three types: active, passive, and performance. Your active monitors are like your ping monitor. These are just simply monitors where WhatsUp was looking for up status or a down status. What you're looking at here in this list are a number of various active monitor types that are available in the WhatsUp Gold product. And so you can see things like APC UPS if you're running those devices. You can monitor them for status, where we're looking at battery status, capacity, runtime, and output, and a number of specific errors here that it will track. You can do other types of monitoring like DNS. You can do things like email monitoring. There's BGP pair status here as well. You can monitor a file to tell you if it's been modified within the last hour. HTTP content monitoring is for your websites. Is the page loading or not? If it requires authentication, WhatsUp can authenticate to it and then report on whether the next page or the landing page is up or not. You'll see other things like power supply is here. There's PowerShell, um, printer monitoring. You want to know the status of your paper, toner, process monitoring, any exe that is running on your Windows devices. You can monitor those with either SNMP or WMI. There's REST API monitoring, part of the premium and higher versions of WhatsUp Gold. Service Monitor for your Windows service monitoring needs. You have that there. You will also see SNMP monitoring. So any custom MIBs. By the way, WhatsUp Gold comes with an extensive MIB library of various vendors, various known vendors. You'll be able to access that MIB library as well. And then there's also things like SQL query. There are things like SSH, SSL certificate monitoring. Do you want to know if your page or your site's certificate is going to expire, let's say within the next 60 days? You could have that, pay attention to your certificate expiration. Storage monitoring is available in WhatsUp Gold, NetApp, EMC. You'll be able to do so with it. And then this is more for Cisco VoIP here. We can monitor MOS, IPSLA, and then you'll see down at the bottom Windows, so WMI formatted monitoring or WMI monitoring for your Windows monitoring need, where it will access data in Windows Perfmon. So that's your active monitors. You also have passive monitoring, where we listen for three types of data: Windows events, syslog, and traps. So using any of these, you'll be able to collect information on event specific event ID, maybe a specific event warning and so forth. And you can set up alerting on that. Same with your syslogs, same with your SNMP traps. So these are called passive monitoring because in this case, what's it's not actively polling as it does with active monitors, as it does with performance monitors. It's just simply passively listening for these events to be triggered. And then finally, you have your performance monitors, where much like the active monitors, very similar in what we have available, you'll be able to find those monitors here. The difference is that here it's actually taking information that it finds and it's writing to our database so that you could run reports, so you can see trends and so forth. You can see when it crosses a certain threshold, and then you could tell WhatsUp Go, hey, alert me when disk utilization is over 80%, for example. And so using any number of these performance monitor types, you have access to various types of data in your infrastructure where you could extract information and then report on them. So you have anywhere things like WMI, you have SSH, you have SQL queries, you have SNMP, you even have REST API, PowerShell, and so on. So using any of these, as long as you pull some value, or what's called pull some value, you'll be able to report on them, and it will let you know if it crosses or falls below certain thresholds. So that's your monitors library. As you can see, quite a bit that you can do with the product itself, and that's just the core product. Now, the other area that we want to look at are what actions are available. So, when WhatsUp Gold discovers your network and now is tasked with monitoring your network, you want it to be able to take action as well when it detects things are down. And so it will start here with this list with typically email. You want to be notified that things are down. If you're using ServiceNow or OpsGenie, those are built in already. You can also use other services like PagerDuty that typically uses log to file. But you could use in-house applications that you might be that your organization might be using, like Microsoft Teams or Slack or IFTTT, if this then that, which uses webhooks. You could have it execute PowerShell scripts. You could have it execute any program action. There is SMS options available as well. But these are all the options you have in terms of action. So not only is it set up or designed to notify you that things are down, but it can take corrective actions or self-healing actions to deal with those issues as well. So those are your actions library that are available in the product. So and then from here, there are some additional types of items that you could take a look at if you evaluate the product. Go to whatsupgold.com to look at some various other various settings. Remember, I mentioned the S&P MIM Manager. That's this part where, as I mentioned, it comes preloaded with many of the more common vendor MIBs out there. They're here. Adding a new MIB is simple. Just download it and then add it here. It will ask you for that file location where you can browse to it and then select it. Okay, so with that, let's jump over to analyze. So we're discovering devices, we're monitoring devices, we've set up alerting. Let's report on those devices. So all of that will be found under the analyze section. Now, starting at the very top here, you will see the dashboard view where this can do anything from give you more of a high level view where you see big blocks of letters and colors and so on, or you could go into more detailed information like what are the top 10 devices using the most CPU, the most memory, and so forth. And these reports can be adjusted. You can adjust the width of these modules and so forth. You could add your own specific reports where you can report on, in this case, interface utilization on a particular switch. You'll notice that up here, there's an add view section where you can select either an empty view or a template. And when you do, this portion here opens up where you could then use any of these reports to then decide where you want to add them on the dashboard. As you can see, I've created quite a bit here. These dashboards are yours and yours only until you share them with other users. And you could also set these dashboards up to run, to be exported or scheduled exported, meaning you can send them via email to anyone in your organization. So the dashboard is basically based on data that WhatsUp was already collecting. It just gives you different ways of presenting that information. So if I were just interested in disk and memory for a specific group, I would look at this particular report where in my little folder called the local group, these are all devices that I monitor personally. I can see at any given moment what disk free space, what disk utilization is, what memory utilization is on the devices in that group. And I'll just simply just go here and they will always show me that data. Now, I can access the same information going to the standard disk utilization report, but then I'll have to browse for those devices and select the devices. So in this case, I'll select the local group again and then hit apply. And here I'm seeing information. And let's say I wanted to see last week and previous week or previous month, I can do that. But going back to the dashboard, however I set it is what it's going to always load for me. So that's one of the benefits of having dashboards where some of your core devices, some of your main devices that you're really interested in, you can set them up to be always on display when you go to those dashboards. But you could go to the default reports for, monitoring top 10, what are the top 10 devices using CPU, memory, disk, or any custom performance monitor that you have in the performance section. You can go to the network section to look at network device specific performance monitors like interface utilization, interface traffic, interface errors and discards, ping response time if you want to know, want to track things like latency information. Ping response time report is a good one to show you where we're experiencing some latency issues. You could also do things like track things, errors and discards on your devices. In the device report section, we have data that is specific to devices status, their availability, like the device uptime report. And so here, for example, we could say, well, let's run a report for previous month. What is the percentage availability of my devices previous month? And so a report like this, you could set it up to run on a recurring basis um, to, let's say every month on the first day of the month. And then it will run that device uptime report for previous month and deliver it to whoever is in your distribution there. So in fact, that export option is available on most reports in WhatsUp Gold. So the device report section, again, filled with reports, filled with different types of data that is available. What are the state changes that are happening, where each monitoring a device, any state change that it underwent is written to this particular report called the state change timeline report. So this is a good report for diagnostics. When you go back to each device, you'll see this option called a status report. You could right click and go to device status, or you can click that little heart up here on the top right. And then it will open up the report itself specific to that device. One of the areas that it will focus on, and that will be found under this first step called monitoring, is going to be a section called tail of state change. And that is referring back to that state change timeline report, but now this data is unique to whichever device is in context here, where we will show you what state changes have occurred on that particular device for today, or you could go back to previous days as well. So that's the data that's one of the important data that WhatsUp Gold will share in the device status report itself. There's some other reports here that you could keep up with, like what are the availability of active monitors and so on, that you could track on devices. You could look at device utilization summary. If I have a device that I am monitoring and I want to know performance for memory, disk, CPU, I can run this report and I can see in one snapshot, one view, where everything is at this very given moment. So again, quite a bit of information that we provide, different angles to how the devices are monitored, what types of data we're looking at, and so on. And you could leverage any of these reports for depending on which specific need you have. Under the inventory section, remember we talked about you know asset details, serial numbers that have been discovered on your network, and so on. This is a useful report. You can run this report by subnets. You can then also run reports like install software. What are the software that are installed on your network? A good use case I like to use for this is, let's say I wanted to find out what version of Chrome is installed on my devices. And if I spell that correctly, we could CH. So here it'll filter all my devices that are running Chrome. And one use case I have for this is a way I can learn what devices have an old version of this particular software, right? So I can see right away there that there's some old versions installed on some of these devices. And you could then clear the filter by just unchecking that box. Other types of inventory report that we collect are things like device connectivity. Of all the devices that are connected, what devices are they? Which port are they using on both ends? What type of connection is it? That is some of the reporting that we're doing there. And then you have things like software updates. So your Windows updates. This is a report that will show you just your Windows update information that we found on your Windows devices. And then finally, there's a tool section here where you can leverage these tools for monitoring your testing, whether it's SNMP gets, you want to do MAC address finds, you want to do layer 2 traces and so on for your basic everyday network testing needs. These tools are available in the product as well. What follows next are a list of plugins rather that WhatsUp Gold comes with. First, I mentioned earlier application monitoring. You do have the ability to track applications by their performance and their availability using the APM tool. In this case, it's not necessarily focusing on whether a device is online or not. It's giving you the overall status of applications. So I can say, let's select one of mine here, for example, SQL. And what it does, and I'll show you these monitors, it not only check to see whether a SQL service is running or whether a SQL port is being used or if there's a specific SQL process that we need to track, it's taking a look at everything port, services, access methods. Here you see full scans per second. You can see deadlocks and so forth. All of these are data that is collected combined to give you the overall status of your SQL server. So that's what the APM tool provides. Next, you have config management. This is more for tracking whether configuration changes have happened on devices and if there are changes in those configurations, what are they? And so what WhatsUp Gold does with these is using SSH or Telnet, it's able to connect the devices, back up their configuration, and it will not make a new backup unless it finds a difference uh, um, in the current configuration compared to the previous backup. And so WhatsUp Gold can do configuration management. It could push firmware updates and so forth with this configuration management tool. The other option that you saw here is log management, where WhatsUp Gold comes now equipped with a log management add-on. This particular add-on is the one that is using its own database. It uses Elasticsearch instead of SQL, and it's there to collect Windows and syslog data. So you could track what logs are coming in using the log management feature. The log viewer is going to show you all the logs. You could create different filters to look at specific errors using this feature. Now, under the network track analysis section, this is where you'll find data based upon NetFlow data. So WhatsUp Gold has a network track analysis add-on where you can see things like top conversations on your network. You could see the top websites that, in terms of data used, that we're receiving data from. So if you go to your sources, your firewall, or your core switches, your edge devices, and you want to know, okay, I see utilization. I can see there's a percentage utilization, but I don't know what that data is. NetFlow is a very useful protocol that you could use to determine what that data is or get a better idea of what that data is. You could see traffic according to cities. You could see what type of applications people are using, top applications. You could see things like top ports that are used. The senders and receiver section will focus on the conversations. What are the IP addresses that are talking the most? In terms of data usage or what website. And any of these you could basically filter on any piece of information. So let's say I wanted to see who's in communication with the UK right now. I can filter to include that top level domain. And when I scroll back up here, these are all the conversations related to the UK. Then you could clear that option as well by just simply going, here's the top city there. You could clear that option by going up here and doing the clear advanced filters. Under troubleshooting, this will provide you with some additional details like what are the top senders with the most failed connections, or top sender with the most conversation partners, or top receivers with the most failed connections. Suspicious connections, I don't have anything here, but WhatsUp Gold does come with a IP reputation library based upon Tor project, where it filters or looks for specific IP addresses that are considered dark sites, or any other IP address that you provide through this library. WhatsUp Gold would then deem that as a suspicious connection. Of course, you could set alerting on that. And then you will see the virtual monitoring dashboard here as well, where in this case, it is giving you performance information from the perspective of your virtual infrastructure. So whether it's the vCenter itself or you're looking at specific hosts, you can select any of these and see what VMs are powered on that are monitored by WhatsUp Gold and what type of resources they're using. The final one here is called wireless monitoring. This is the dashboard of the wireless infrastructure, where it will show you again things like client information, traffic in, traffic out. It will give you things like bandwidth and signal strength, quality, and so forth. All of this is information that WhatsUp is able to monitor in your wireless infrastructure using protocols like SNMP. And then one other thing with the wireless monitoring, it is listed as an add-on. However, it is part of the premium and higher version of WhatsUp Gold. So it comes with the core product. So that is not a paid for add-on. Now, the final option that you see here is something called Flowmon. Now, this relates to one of our um, other products in the Progress family, that collects Flowmon details. And so with version 22 of WhatsUp Gold, where we now come integrated with a dashboard to show you information that we're gathering from the Flowmon device. So if we were to browse to a um, Flowmon device, I'll show you what that information would look like. So let's take a look here. So here's the Flowmon dashboard where you'll see things like network operations data, as well as security operations data. And so what it does, it selects information or it collects information using an API to our Flowmon software to pull this information and show you things like events by severity as well as events by methods. Like, are there high scans happening and high transmission rates and so forth. It is showing you that level of details. And then it also will show you Flowmon specific events from these devices that WhatsUp Gold is collecting through its own dashboard. So it is a separate tool. It's just that this version of WhatsUp Gold will give you a dashboard where you could take a look at what's happening there on that particular device. So we could see what type of events it is discovering or identifying on your network in terms of security as well as network events. So right now what it's doing is drawing that information and it's going to load it up. Looks like we had a problem there pulling that data. So let me go back to previous. We can see if we have any data there. Now, the final option that you see down below is the Flowmon section. Now, this is not a function of WhatsUp Gold. Flowmon is one of our sister products in the Progress software family that does deep flow analysis of your network from a network perspective, also from a security perspective. This particular demo is not going to go much into it other than to show you that WhatsUp Gold 2022 and later comes with a dashboard that uses an API to connect to our Flowmon um, um, software or device and is able to pull data in so you can get that single pane of glass view in terms of security / network type deep analytics that are happening through our Flowmon tool. So starting with the Flowmon dashboard at the very top here, this is what you're looking at. Two sets of data that you'll see at the very top here are your network operations, where it will take network data in terms of traffic, response time, and so on. You'll be able to see that from our Flowmon device. And then there's security operations, where we'll look at things like events by method. Events are things like high scan or high transmission rates or anomalies on your network. And then those events are categorized by severity, whether they're critical, high, and warning, and you'll get a number count on that. Now, that data is based upon what you will see in the Flowmon dashboard or the Flowmon events rather. And so when we go into the Flowmon events and we select the device, it will then load all of the what we'll call perspectives, whether it's custom, operation. Let's go into security issues. And so it will go through the process of collecting this data and bring it over here to this dashboard. And so here you'll see at the very top, it will show you events by severity. You see these pie charts, you'll see events by methods. And then you can use any of these pieces of the pie chart to filter on specific issues. So those are all of our medium categories. If you look at some, well, here are your mediums. If you want to look at criticals, you could just do that, and let's go ahead and turn that off. And so down below here, you'll see all of your critical events. And you will see there's an option here to view event details, where this particular option then will take you over to the Flowmon device, where you can uh, get a better look and more details on these events that are reported within WhatsUp Gold. So that was an overview of WhatsUp Gold and its functions and features, as well as some of the dashboards that integrate with other products like Flowmon. So if you have any questions, you could also always reach out to us. You can go to whatsupgold.com. That is where you can download a copy for yourself. It's fully unlocked in terms of all of the plugins that are available, and you'll be able to then download it and run it in your own environment. And then any questions, we could also set up a call with you and take a look at how WhatsUp is operating in your environment. So thank you for watching. Have a good one.